Okay. Hi everyone. Again, so my name is Pam, and I've been with Conestoga for a number of years and have been working with essential skills. I was just thinking back, I think it was 2006 when I did my original training, so it's been over a decade that I've been doing different projects related to essential skills. So I'm just going to forward the slides here. There we go. All right, so since I did my training and since I've been working at Conestoga, we've had a variety of different projects just to give you a sense of the kinds of things that we've worked on. A variety of projects. Some of them have been Ontario-based, some of them have been pan-Canadian projects with different colleges across Canada. And a good chunk of provinces have been involved in different projects across Canada, so it's been well used. And we've done a variety of things working with employers to assess their workplace demands. So if we've had employers that wanted to hire and they maybe wanted to do some assessment on what their job description might look like or what sort of testing they should do or what kind of skills they should look for, we've worked on projects like that. We've also worked with job seekers to assess their essential skills and then ultimately build portfolios based on their skills. And we've also worked with a variety of different evaluations on how do we assess these skills. And we have a variety of staff here at Conestoga with a variety of different essential skills training. So we've been pretty heavily involved in a variety of different ways. So why these essential skills? Well, I'll go into it a little more detail in a few slides, but ultimately employers over the years, and you'll still see this being the case, although I believe there is a shift happening, employers try to hire on education or technical skills. So they often will look at that, and then they are often disappointed in the job seeker's ability to fit, or maybe to sort of problem solve. And then employees are fired on fit. So the employers try to hire on technical skills and then they fire on fit. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. So, you know, when I say fit, you might say, what's that all about? What does that really mean? And so in a variety of different places over the last, I don't know, 6 to 12 months, I've seen a variety of different terms that contribute to fit, I guess, or could be under that umbrella. One is employability skills, so there's lots of articles and things. I will get LinkedIn articles, I'll see things on Facebook, I'll see things through different associations that I'm associated with. You see it in the broad news. So you see things like employability skills, things like accuracy, problem solving, and critical thinking. Sometimes people call them people skills, communication, teamwork, and then the last one there, the most recent article that I saw was in the Globe and Mail, and they talked about human skills. So those are all interesting things to look at when it comes to finding the right place in employment and in the work that we're looking at doing for the rest of our lives. So, and related to this then, job searching is getting a little tougher. I've said this a lot of times to our job seekers here in our sessions that you know, it used to be that we would prepare a resume, we would help people prepare a resume, or we as job seekers would prepare a resume, and you'd hand your resume off to an employer and sort of cross your fingers and hope that they would see that you're a fit. And ultimately what's happening, or the shift that really is happening in that, is that job seekers are far more responsible in being aware of what they offer and what the workplace demands are. So matching their resume, cover letter, interview questions and answers to the demands of the employer, and demonstrating again that you are a fit. So I always use a really simple example when I'm talking to clients about any kind of job seeker around looking at fit and trying to figure out how you're a good fit. I try and take it back to something. If you're a homeowner and you want to build a shed, or you want to have someone rather build a shed for you, you would you probably want some things in your head. If you've ever had to hire anybody at your house to do something for you, or it could be, you could think of a variety of things, whether it's babysitting a child for you, maybe even if you're looking for a new hairdresser or something like that, or hairstylist, you have a certain number of things that you're looking for. So I'll go back to the shed example. If you are wanting to hire somebody to build a shed for you, you want somebody who probably knows what the regulations are for the geographical area that you live in, whether it's region or city or township or whatever that looks like. You want someone who's familiar with different kinds of materials. You want someone who can measure. You want someone who knows the products, who's good with a level. If you have special things they have to build around, whether it's trees or fences or whatever. So you want someone who can sell, that they can offer those things to you, opposed to them coming up to you and saying, hey, I build sheds, and you don't want to have to ask all of those things. So I try and flip it around for job seekers to be able to say, you know what, you need to know what it is the employer is looking for. You need to be able to sell, you need to be able to know what you have to offer and how you can sort of sell yourself through that process. So let's talk a couple of minutes here around, well, first of all, I'll show a job description. So I pulled this off of Workopolis just a few days ago, week and a half ago. And, this is what we might see in a typical job posting. And it was for Leon's. So it's a customer care supervisor. And on the left side, you'll see, sort of why you should work at Leon's. They didn't have a lot of tasks or responsibilities. On the right side, interestingly enough, as we go along, you'll see that a good chunk of the right side of what they're looking for has to do a lot more with fit than technical skills. So I might think that if I was going to work at Leon's, I might need to know a little bit about furniture. That's what I think of anyway, off the top of my head, or appliances. I didn't go to their website to check out if there's anything new that they're selling. But one would think you might want to have a little bit of technical knowledge around some of those things, what things are made of, features, those kinds of things. But in fact, when we look at it, the whole entire right side really is about fit type of things. So the ability to communicate, written and orally, it talks about personality, it's problem solving, analytical skills, organizational skills, and being able to work collaboratively with fellow colleagues and interact professionally with customers. So a lot of those things have to do with fit rather than technical skills or content. So having looked at that, let's look at, how would you decide what you would add to your resume? So you might look at personal experience. So if you've had some sort of customer service background, you might have something to add to your resume from that. If you were trying to figure out what to put into your resume to show that you have skills to fit that, you might look at labor market websites such as the NOC website, the National Occupational Classification, or maybe the job bank, and look at labor market information there. Different places will use different sites like Career Cruising or Career Coach. Conestoga has Career Coach on their main page to look at labor market information. And maybe you might do information interviews where you would chat with people who are working in the field. So if you knew somebody who had worked at a Leon's or something similar to that, you might do that. Or an alternative that you might look at could be something like essential skills profiles. So that we're going to have a chat about a little bit more about how we might be able to use this in this context. So I'll tell you a little bit about the history of essential skills. I really could do and have done multi-day workshops on essential skills. So it's a really big topic, but we're really covering it in a short period of time today, and specifically looking at the profiles and how they can be used. So a little bit of history on essential skills, and then a little bit on the essential skills profiles. So back in the mid-90s, there were many conversations between industry and government, and industry had been looking at as they still often do, hiring based on education, and employers were saying, you know what, I can hire 2 people, whether it's high school graduates, college graduates, university graduates, doesn't matter. I can hire at any level, hire 2 people from the same program, same school, same level, and they will have completely different skills. Or how they were talking about it more was the success of the candidate. So one person's successful, one person isn't, even though they have the exact same education background. So through this research, they really identified a difference between, you know, the skills that they were looking at and then the education background. So there's also some research done in comparison with other countries. I know that they looked at Australia as another, there are a few, and the US, there were a few different countries that they looked at who also were doing research at the same time and had discovered models that they were looking at to look at sort of a skills assessment piece around entering the workplace. So once they determined that there were, essentially when it started, there were 9 skills that they looked at, and now it's the profiles are a little bit different. There's more like 7 that they're looking at. But ultimately, they discovered these 9 essential skills that really could be used in any job. So it was whether you were at the lowest end of the pay scale or the highest end of the pay scale, or if you required no post-secondary for a job, or if you required a PhD. There are 9 skills that are required in the Canadian workplace. And so what they did was they wanted to say, okay, well, let's see how this plays out in different occupations. So they trained some career counselors and literacy professionals and had them ask standardized questions to everyone that they were interviewing to be able to put together these profiles. So they did interviews with employees who are considered to be successful in their field. So that, for example, let's take hotel clerk. So they would go out and there'd be a hotel management that determined employees who were successful at working at the front desk, and they tried to 10 interviews, usually across Canada, different provinces, also at different size employers. So you might have your entry level kind of, I guess, Motel 6, Best Western kind of end of things, and right up to sort of high-end hotels. And so they asked them sort of what they did in these 9 different areas. So again, the profiles are written in the same format, no matter the education or salary level. It's based on the skills, which we'll talk a little bit more about later, about how that works as far as career laddering and things. So there's some really neat things that can be done with that. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to show you these profiles. And so I'll click on the link in a second. You can certainly take note of the link that's there. It seems that the address changes on a regular basis. So it's a bit tricky. So often wherever I am, I just Google essential skills profiles, and this is the page that usually comes up as the first page, but we'll go ahead and go to this website. So there are a variety of things that you can see here on the site. So I'll do a little tiny lesson on the complexity ratings in a minute. You can certainly go into greater detail. There's a guide to using the profiles. There's lots of information if we scroll down. I'm not going to do that today. I'm going to focus primarily on the essential skills profiles. So I'm going to click on this Explore Careers by Essential Skills Profiles. So these profiles, of course, you can see that they're in alphabetical order. So there is no search bar from this main page where the titles are. So you can select an occupation. So you can go in alphabetically and look at that. If you don't immediately see something that you would like to see, you can click on any of the profiles, and then you can actually click in this box in the occupation, and you could search something else, and you have to hit go. You can't just hit enter. So you have to put in your title and go. And there are approximately, on the front page it says there's approximately 350 of these. These are not short. If you were to print them, they're somewhere between 5 and 6 pages. So I recommend that if you're using these, to figure out what you'd like to be doing, if you're using it more on a career exploration end of things as opposed to job search, I would use something else like the National Occupational Classification. They're a little shorter, so a one-pager. This is more for folks who are really focusing on putting together resume, maybe preparing for interview questions. So it's a little bit more information. So if you had like 10 of these you were looking at, you'd have a lot of information to review. So I would start smaller if you're doing CareerX and use this more for job search. So what you'll see, some beautiful things about this, you'll see that there's the National Occupational Classification Code. So there have been some changes recently. I'm not sure if these ones have been updated with the 2016 NOC code, so there might be a little bit of a gap there. But essentially, you've got the titles that are similar to the titles that you would see used at other government websites. So they give a little tiny blurb here, just usually one sentence, maybe two, about what this particular role might do. So then what you can do is I'm just going to go ahead here and click on all of these. So it's going to expand them all. So I can click on reading and document use, writing, numeracy, oral communication, thinking skills, lots of thinking skills, digital technology, lots of digital technology. And then this one, not all profiles have this, but this one is the impact of digital technology. So it's giving a sense of, if for this particular occupation, here are the ways that the jobs are changing based on digital technology, which is interesting, given if you are out shopping or grocery shopping on a regular basis. More and more, certainly in my area here in Kitchener, there are more and more stores that have the self-checkout, and of course the McDonald's now more or less have replaced a lot of their frontline staff. So I think of those kinds of things, of looking at the impact of digital technology on the particular occupations that we're looking at. So I'm going to go back up to the top here and just talk through a little bit about what these look like. So ultimately, I'll talk a little bit. You'll see that, so for reading, for instance, these are a variety of different tasks. They are written in levels of complexity. Again, the complexity levels are a whole other workshop, but I'll do a little bit of a overview of it. So ultimately, 1 is less complex, and you may see some in this one that may go as high as a 4, but a lot of them are 3. Ultimately, any profile will go as high as a 5. And what happens is the higher the number, the longer the text, the bigger the words, and the more you have to do with it. So for instance, a level 1 reading task is reading a short note from a coworker. You don't have to do a whole lot with it. Pull up maybe one piece of information. You'll see that a level 2 task, so read the 4th point down, read a variety of instructions and procedures. So immediately a short note to a variety of instructions and procedures got longer. And then if you go down to, say, the very last point in reading, it's reading journals, so it got a lot longer. Now it's reference materials, now it has medical terms and so on. So not a lot that we're going to focus on the complexity for this session, but just to know that they're generally written in sort of the least complex to the most complex. And interestingly, so reading isn't something that we necessarily think of immediately for workplace things to include on a resume. I don't know that I would include reading specifically on a resume. That's sort of an expectation that lots of employers have. It's really more about what you do with that. So if you are staying on top of journals and different things, so it's really about the comprehension and how you're having that play out in the workplace. So document use is another one. That's a big one for lots and lots of workplaces. That's when I referred to accuracy earlier on in the fit. Document use is really the place where you can have some issues with accuracy. So these can be some ideas around what the expectations might be in the workplace. So there's writing, there's numeracy. I'm not going to go through necessarily all of them. You can have a look at these at your leisure another time. Oral communication is a big one. So in that job posting that we looked at for Leon's, so we were looking at, I don't think there's anything related to numeracy. There's accuracy, which of course could be numeracy and document use. There certainly was something around oral communication. There was written and oral communication. There was problem solving and critical thinking. So here's a whole long list of things related to that. Problem solving, critical thinking would definitely fall under that. So there's a variety of different factors that fall under thinking. So here's where I think these are, well, I'll go into it in more detail, but as we're here in this spot, these are excellent examples for adding things to your resume. So if you're trying to think of, what did I do in my last job? What can I do? What are the expectations of the new job that I'm applying to? These are excellent things that can be used, and I'll actually show you another tool in a minute to sort of look at how to be able to use them. So for me, I think that if nothing else, they're certainly labor market information. If I'm trying to jump from one job to another and I need to know how does this translate, I mean, what can happen is if I had a great deal of experience as that we went into office clerk, admin clerk. If I was trying to go into customer service or going into something else, I could pull up and or print out, I guess, something like this digital technology piece or the entire profile, look at another profile. Let's say I wanted to go from, let's use this example, so office admin clerk to accounting clerk, which was, I think, the first one that was on the list of occupations. I could then take this digital technology section from this one and look at the next level up, which could be accounting clerk, and look at, do the ones and twos look the same? Are there maybe more threes? Is it more complicated? How can I demonstrate that in my resume from the job that I was doing before? Have I handled, maybe be looking down at this bottom one, you may use bookkeeping, billing, and accounting software. If I did that in this particular role and I want to demonstrate that because I'm applying to an accounting clerk role, then it gives me some ideas of how I can demonstrate from one to the other. So that's sort of the overview of the profile. I'll go back again just so people can see. So I could go into any of these occupation-wise, have a look at those alphabetically. And again, I can click on any of these, go in, and I could search plumber. Oh, and I have to hit go. I always have to remember that. And now I've moved to the plumbing one, so then I can go through and look at how that differs. And you'll see immediately there's some fours there that are looking at some more complex reading that's required for that particular role. All right, so I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. So what I'm looking at then is, so what? So here are these essential skills profiles. What can I do with them? So here's 5 areas that we'll have a bit of a look at. So certainly for labor market research, and I'll go into that in more detail in the next slide. Resume creation for sure. There's a neat tool that I can show you about that. Interview preparation for sure we'll talk about as an assessment tool, and I already sort of talked a little bit about career laddering, how you could compare a couple of profiles, but we'll talk a little bit more about that. So for labor market research, so if hidden job market, maybe you hear that there's a job coming up at a certain company, you have an idea of what the job title is, but you don't really know for sure what the day-to-day operation might look like. Well, maybe an essential skills profile can help. So if you don't have a job posting, maybe you can go in and have a look at the essential skills profile. It's a mini job description. So that certainly can be helpful. That's the last point on the slide there. I'm jumping around a little bit. It can help you identify an occupation you might want to train or apply for. So if you are looking at, somebody says, hey, you should be which we often hear when we're job seekers. Maybe you want to get into this type of work. Well, if you don't know what that type of work is, something like the essential skills profile can be helpful. It can help you sort of gather information about what a day in the life of. I kind of refer to it as almost like an information interview in a can. So it's sort of a day in the life of that particular occupation. Again, I mentioned it's a generic job description. So it can be helpful to be able to look at that for labor market research. Is this something I want to do? So I've had folks that I say, okay, they're still generic. So if you went in and you were looking at a particular profile and it said that, you know, may review research articles for something, and if that's something that you have absolutely no interest in doing, then you know that maybe there are jobs out there that you could do that same role, but you need to be able to sort of screen that when you're looking at the job posting or when you're gathering information about a particular role. Then you kind of go, you know what, I'm not so keen on that research piece of it, so I need to steer away from it. So for example, in a career counseling setting, there are dozens of job descriptions that are in career counseling. Some of them may help people be placed and you have to handle some sort of budgetary kind of thing, and there's other roles that have nothing to do with that. So so you could be doing different things, but if you have a sense of that could be something that I have to deal with, I either need to learn the skill or I need to move away from it. So that's just some interesting information around the labor market. So another tool or another way for sure that you could be using the profiles is to actually help you with creating a resume. So if you can't remember tasks that you did at a past job, maybe an essential skills profile can help. I know for a lot of people, they look at that and they go, oh yeah, I did that, I did that, I did that. And they use it almost as a checklist, and it helps them to add meaningful statements to their resume. So there is a job posting tool. I'm not going to go through it. The next slide, or actually 2 slides up, there's I will show you a sort of part of this tool. But if you have a look at that Copian website, there is an entire resume tool that can guide people through using the profile for writing resumes. So for instance, so if I took part of a profile, so I can't remember which profile I took it from, but I think maybe it was from the customer service one. So there was a numeracy section. I just did a cut and paste, and so you know, it's looking at receiving cash, debit, gift card and credit payments, and measuring products and goods, and comparing price tags and so on. So you can have a look at each of those points or description from the profile, and then you can move into this. So this is part of the resume statement tool that I talked about. So normally, if you are writing a resume and you're describing something that you did at a job, you could take, if the first line of one of the points from the previous slide was estimate, well, if you did it in the past, you change it to the past, of course. So it's estimated. This example is for a server. So then you might ask yourself that in that yellow box, you're going to ask things like, in your experience, like, what did you do, how much, how often, or why? And sometimes I even add for myself, it's like, so what? So you look at why you did it. So in this case, it's estimated the number of tables needed to serve a group on an ongoing basis to ensure service was uninterrupted and client satisfaction was excellent. And so you'll see on, that's one of the lines. So then estimated the number of tables to serve a group on an ongoing basis to ensure was uninterrupted and client satisfaction was excellent. So to me, there's no shame in looking at this. It's like, if it's written for you and those are things that you've done, here's a pretty straightforward sample on looking at how to take information from the different profiles. And ultimately, if you've had a variety of different roles, you could be taking a variety of different profiles and creating resume statements from this, especially using that those questions in the middle around what, how much, how often, or why. So that's looking at how we can use it for resumes. So also, of course, in looking at interview prep. So often interview questions ask about communication, teamwork, problem solving, critical thinking, lots of things that are covered in the essential skills profiles. So, and in some cases, especially when you're looking at the sort of the higher skills, if you're looking at a level 4 and different things in the different areas, if it's a 4 complexity, they often will give you some sort of an example. And even in some of the profiles that we looked at, there were some examples. And so reviewing a profile might bring to mind examples of situation that you've handled in order to prepare sort of a relevant answer for a variety of different interview questions. So similar to the resume statement tool, it's really looking at, okay, so now you're saying this is what you did, and then it's looking at how did you do it. So how can you turn that maybe into using it for, say, a star response or something like that. All right, so assessment. So profiles could be used as an assessment. So before I have used it with a variety of job seekers. So if they said, I think I want to be fill in the blank of whatever the job or occupation is, I would actually print it out and I'd say, okay, great. Then go through this, highlight it, put checkbox, or you almost put check boxes that I have actually cut and pasted them into sort of a checkbox kind of thing, and start checking off the skills that you believe you have to be able to start marketing yourself around those particular skills. So you might make decisions about whether or not you apply to a job based on the profiles and how many of the areas you've met, because I've had some folks as well that have looked at it and went, oh, I didn't really know that being an admin assistant meant that. I've had folks that sometimes would say to me, maybe if they had a higher level of education and they were saying I need a survival job or something, oh, I think I'll just be and maybe they'll pick admin assistant, and then they don't realize the sort of the specialty skills in a particular occupation. So they really were able to look at it and go, ooh, maybe that's not what I should be looking at. Maybe I should be looking at something else in my field, or something else that it doesn't have as specific skills. So a variety of ways of looking at that. And then it might help in identifying strengths to highlight in interview answers. So again, preparation for that job search stuff, whether it's resume writing, whether it's interview skills, but certainly being able to do an assessment around where you stand. And ultimately too, that if you are looking at, in combination with, say, a job posting, maybe you need to be looking at some further training. Is it self-directed training that you might be doing through online courses, or are you looking at second career training? So it really, if there are things that are coming out, I've had folks, again, that have been in my workshops that maybe didn't have the computer skills that they thought they had, and that would talk about the digital technology piece, or maybe the writing skills. I had a couple of folks recently that I chatted with, and they said, you know what, I see all these writing, so the world of work has changed since I've been job searching, and I realized that the writing skills, that if this is what the expectation is, that I need to be able to do some practice and accessing maybe some literacy services in the area to practice writing skills, writing email, professional email, those kinds of things, or report writing or something along those lines. All right, so I talked a little bit about this when we were actually on the profiles. So for me, so I kind of call it career laddering. It's really looking at building your skills and experience. So looking at, if I'm starting off in entry-level customer service, but I'd like to move into maybe admin at some point, and then maybe I'd like to move into accounting clerk, and then maybe I'd like to move into something higher than that, like full-on accounting, something along those lines. The beauty of the essential skills profiles are that they all are written in the same 9 essential skills, and so you can look at those and be looking at, okay, so here's the level that's required for the entry level, here's the one that's required on the next. So you're speaking the same language from one to the next, and it can help you actually map out skills that you need to acquire, whether that's looking at it through professional development while you're working, whether it's asking someone on the job to say, hey, I need to know a little bit more about this part of Excel or something because I don't know how to use that, or is it online courses, a variety of different things. So it can help you look at your transferable skills, your areas of growth, and identify areas to train in. All right. So essential skills, it's a big topic. There's a lot of different ways that they can be used. There are many resources. There are a variety of different. We're talking about using the checklist as a potential assessment, but there are other assessments out there, both informal as well as formal assessments like TAOS testing. And sort of this is just one area that can be used kind of around the labor market piece and doing the research and then preparing your tools for job searching. So I'll do a little recap here. So ultimately, for me, when I look at essential skills, that this is one way that you can look at skills, employability skills, fit, and looking at sort of that employer focus. So you could look, if you Googled employability skills, you get a whole other grouping of skills. But the essential skills certainly have had a lot of research that have backed them as far as looking at the complexity level and the skills that are needed in the workplace. Again, job seeker responsibility in providing the right information to the employer. So again, with the job seeker having the responsibility to kind of understand the workplace environment and be able to sort of sell themselves on having the skills that the employer is looking for, they need to have that labor market information. And again, it's a consistent, organized way of finding that information. And we talked, of course, about labor market research. So for the hidden job market, so if there's something you need to find out about that, if you're going into a situation like a career fair or something that you don't know exactly maybe what they're hiring for, then it can be some research. And then we talked about the variety of other ways, the resume creation, the interview preparation as an assessment tool, and then the career laddering. So I've come to the end of my presentation. Janet, we didn't have any questions along the way, I take it? Are there any questions that we have?
None have come up yet, but very informative. Lots of areas where people can research and look up. So it's a lot of great information that you've provided.
Mm-hmm.
We'll just give it a couple of minutes and see if any come in.
Sure.
And I really appreciate this, Pam. I know that for those online, Pam is no longer in the ES department, but has greatly, as I much appreciate, agreed to continue to do this webinar for this fall. So it is much appreciated.